What up, stackers? Hope everyone's doing well in the metalverse, the investing verse. This is the Philly Stacker, and in today's video, I'll be showing off my latest silver purchase. Also, today's ponderings are inspired by the Kansas Kid, the Plague Doctor himself. The last month or so, I've been seeing some videos from the community talking about is silver an investment and growth versus store of value. So stick around. I'm going to add my 2 copper cents to the conversation. This seems to be a divisive conversation in the stacking community, so I'll see how many subscribers I lose today. But if I wanted to grow the channel and add subscribers, I would be talking about silver's going to $300 next week. But that's just not me. I would like to take a moment to thank all the people, all the subscribers, the new subscribers that hang around, all the great encouragement and comments I get. I appreciate each and every one of you. So without further ado, let's start with my most recent pickup. I said I wasn't going to get any more quarters, but they sucked me back in. I was just browsing eBay, looking at stuff, and I click off eBay, and a day later, I get a notice saying $1 off. So I couldn't resist. I really liked this quarter with the cow, the cheese, the corn. So I couldn't resist. Got it at a decent price, so I had to pick it up. I also like the inscription forward. On YouTube, I've been watching this channel, Rufus the Bull, and so cows have been on my mind. So let's put this in a capsule. One thing I love about capsules is like encapsulating your time and energy, saving it for future use. All right, let's go dive into the topic of today. Like I said earlier, today's topic was inspired by the Kansas Kid. I was been watching his channel today, catching up on some community videos, and the last month he seemed to have a constant theme. Some of his recent videos was, if silver hits 100 again, would you sell? Also, the fear of selling silver. And the one I'm going to concentrate more on is don't store wealth, build wealth. And many others this month have been in the community have been talking about is silver an investment. In my humble opinion, I believe silver is the Swiss Army knife of the financial world. It does everything. It can be insurance, investment, savings account, hobby, etc. But like the Swiss Army knife, it does everything, but not always well. One thing I always hear is that, for example, if you had a silver dime in 1920, it'll still buy you it still has the same amount of value today. And of course, I'm talking about a 90% silver dime. And back in 1920, a dime, you could purchase a loaf of bread. And if you look at today's prices, a silver dime melt values about $5, some change. By the time you take that to the coin shop, cash it in, get a little bit back from spot, say you get $4 for that dime. A loaf of bread, a decent loaf of bread today costs $4. So it's definitely is a good store of value. And also, if you were to buy a Coca-Cola back in 1920 with a dime, you could afford 2 Coca-Colas, 5 cents a piece back then. And today, with $4, you can still afford 2 Coca-Colas. So I decided to take that example a little bit farther And I jumped on Grok, which is AI, and I asked it this question. What if I bought 10 cents of Coca-Cola in 1920? How much would that investment be worth in 2026? The answer I got from Grok was a 10-cent investment in Coca-Cola stock in 1920 with dividends reinvested would be worth roughly $130,000 to $150,000 in 2026. That 10 cents would have bought you like 0.0005 of a share of Coca-Cola, but that's with 106 years compounding. And there's that word again, compounding. My last video I talked about vocabulary, and I used compounding as an example, and compounding was a foreign thought to me. I'd never even thought about compounding. So if the word's not in your vocabulary, it won't be in your thoughts either. Oh, let me correct that. It would have bought you 0.00526 shares with the dime. In 1920, one share of Coca-Cola was roughly $20. And that brings me back to Kansas Kid's video, which was titled, Don't Store Wealth, Build Wealth. Looking at my example, we can see that silver is a great store of value. It's held its value over the last 106 years. But over that 106 years, Coca-Cola proves to be the better investment. The problem I have is before I can store wealth, I need to build wealth. Like I said, I believe, silver is the Swiss Army knife of the financial world. And in 2025, silver and gold were king. They were wonderful investments, outperforming almost everything. Silver definitely has investment potential, and every now and then it shines as an investment. But over the long term, there's other investments, which, brings up the question of opportunity costs. I've been reading the book, How You Can Profit from the Coming Devaluation. This book was written back in around 1971 when we left the gold standard. One of my little side quests is, I was born in 1974, Gen X, and I wanted to understand how coming off the gold standard affected me and my generation. Getting back on topic, in 1971 to 1981, I looked at the investments. If you were to invest in stock in that decade, you would have got a 60% return. If you invested in gold in 1971 to 1981, you would have a 250% return. So precious metals in that decade was a better investment. But looking at the next decade, over a 20-year period, from 1971 to 1991, if you were to invest in stocks, you would have had a way bigger return than gold. Between the time period of 1971 to 1991, gold went up 100% and stocks went up 430%. So the first 10 years, gold dominated and was the better investment. Over a 20-year period, stocks were the better investment. So going back to the Swiss Army knife analogy, precious metals as an investment definitely has its moments. And we definitely just witnessed that in 2025. There is one decade in silver's history that the price did not move more than $1. So for 10 years, silver only moved $1. If you had a 25-cent rise in price, that was a big thing. Opportunity cost is definitely something you have to put into the formula. One of the points the Kansas Kid also made was that for some people in the community, precious metals, silver, gold, are their only investments, and they're attached to them and they get emotional around them. They have one tool in the tool bag. They have one tool instead of having a full tool bag. He wanted them to understand that there's a difference between building wealth and a store of value. The Kansas Kid tapped into a struggle that I've been having. If you've watched my channel at all, you know that when silver, back in 2022, when silver was around $22 an ounce, was when I started stacking, and I saw it as an investment. Silver was the only asset that hasn't went back to its all-time high with inflation adjusted. It was silver's time to shine as an investment, and I took advantage of that. And as we were on the run up to $100 plus dollars, if you look back at my videos, I was telling people, they should consider, selling, because, nothing goes up forever. And I sold a portion of my stack, which I regained almost all my capital. So the silver stack I have now is basically a free position, because most of it was bought around $30. And now with the jump up, it seems like around 70s, like a floor that's forming. So, I got in at the right time. But after it went over $100, I was beginning to think, is silver still a good investment? And my conclusion is yes, if you're looking at it long term. So the silver that I'm buying nowadays, I don't look at it as a short-term investment. I look at it as a long-term investment. And I also take advantage of, silver's other attributes. It's a great insurance, hedge against inflation, a great savings account. So today, and I love silver, and I'll always be stacking silver. I'm a big believer in dollar cost averaging. And at the moment, I look at it as a savings account with investment potential in the future. I also believe that there's a good chance that the bull run for precious metals will continue. Throughout silver's history, there's been 7 times when silver has shot up. 5 of those 7 times were kind of like 1980. It shot up, to $50, and then it dropped and, didn't shoot back up for the next 15 years. But there was 2 exceptions. 2 of the 7 times that silver did that, it was interrupted by a recession, and it kind of put the bull market in pause. And then after the recession, it continued to, shoot back up. And I think, there's a good case to be made that, with this, with the war, oil going up, a lot of other factors, that we could be going into a recession, and that recession is just pausing the bull market. And that's, why I didn't sell all my silver. I sold just enough to put myself in a position that if it goes up or if it goes down, that I'll be fine and emotionally stable. I sold some when silver was at $94. I got $4 back from spot, and so I was able to sell some silver for $90 an ounce. When silver was shooting up, if you look at my older videos, I was like, I can't sleep. And so I sold some enough to get close to my capital back, and it's been allowed me to be emotionally stable, to get some sleep. I haven't looked back since it hit 120. I haven't even looked back. The price doesn't bother me at all. The silver I have left is for retirement long term. So, I'm thinking in like a 10 to 15 year range. So a lot of my time and energy now goes into building a stock portfolio. I started off my investment journey with crypto, and I've always said that I began stacking silver as a hedge to protect my crypto, and then I started buying a company stock in order to protect my precious metals. So right now I'm in the process of building a stock portfolio. I have 5 baskets I pour into. I have my 401k. I have trying to create a cash position. I have a crypto position, precious metals position, and now I'm working on a stock position. And depending on the season, I pour more into one than the other. My goal is to become financially free, buy my freedom back. I'm in wealth building mode, not store value mode. Now, there's other people out there that are in a different position. If you're like a boomer and you're at retirement, stuff like that, store value is more important to you than building wealth. But to someone like me that doesn't have wealth, building wealth is more important than storing wealth. One of the stocks that I just started investing in is called SMH. It is from VanEck. It's VanEck Semiconductor ETF. ETF is a basket of stocks. Now, this ETF is designed in a way that it's the top 25 companies in the semiconductor field, like a Taiwan Semiconductor, NVIDIA, etc. And I look at it as the picks and shovels of the AI race. And what I mean by picks and shovels, back in the day during the California gold rush, people rushed out west and they were trying to, get rich finding gold. And so you had to go out, you had to buy a claim, then go work the claim. And to work the claim, you had to buy picks and shovels. And back in that day, the people who sold the picks and shovels did really well, and it was a safe investment. If you were the one out there searching for gold, only, say 25% of the people actually, made money while everyone else lost money. And I kind of see that in the AI, that, that AI stocks are becoming like a bubble. And that's why I chose like the picks and shovels. I don't know which companies will make it. It's kind of like the .com, boom. It's out of it, you'll have your Amazons and those type, your Netflixes, those type of companies will make it, but 90% of the other companies will fail. So I don't know which AI companies are going to make it, which ones are going to fail, but what I do know is that they all need semiconductors, to do what they're doing. So far, I've invested $92 in the SMH, the ETF, and year to date, SMH is up 60% compared to silver is up 6% in 2026. And I've just been throwing in what I can afford to lose. I made my first purchase April 20th. And so it's been like a month, a little over a month. Within that month, I'm already up 16%. And so my $92 has grown into $107. And of course, that'll change. It could drop, tomorrow, or it could go up. But, so with like a $92 investment, my money has grown to $107, which is like 16% growth, which is an amazing percentage within a month. I mean, if you look at a bank account, you might make 4% a year. You put 100 in, you get 104 back. If you were to buy like T-bills, you might spend $96 and get $100 back at the end of the month. It's like tremendous growth. I just wish my broke ass had more money. Like if I invested $1,000, I would have $150 return. If I invested $10,000, I would have $1,500 return so far. But percentage wise, I'm doing really well. And let me throw out the old disclaimer. This is not financial advice. I'm just some random dude on the internet, on YouTube. Don't listen to me. I've always said that, I'm the warning, not the example. But I'm just sharing what I'm up to and how I'm thinking and looking at, the markets. Like I really enjoy, the channels like the Kansas Kid, Thousandaire Radio, Silver Dragoons, the Inefficient Stacker, World Money Wins. Like all these guys, they love precious metals, they're stackers, but they also invest in other things. And I like hearing about, what they're up to, what they're doing. Unfortunately, channels like ours, we catch some flack from the community, from the silver maxis. If I wanted a big channel, I could just lie to everyone, say silver is going to $500 next month, get a few sponsors, But my goal is to teach myself how to become wealthy and take that knowledge and pass it on to others. Have people, ponder ideas, spark thought. And Kansas Kid also touched on the point that, all roads lead to gold. The end goal is to, convert those investments and everything into gold as a store of value. And I also feel the same way, when I do take profits, I put it in the gold. But like I mentioned earlier, I need to build wealth before I store wealth. I was very fortunate to get into precious metals. When I did, I was able to build, a nice foundation. And as long as, silver doesn't go below like $50, $45, I'm still ahead. So that has given me a great foundation to build upon and expand. My conclusion is that, precious metals are definitely an investment. Are they the best investment? You have to weigh the opportunity cost. Knowing what season you're in is important. Like in 2025, precious metals was the best investment. In 2026, not so much. There's other opportunities out there. And I try and take advantage of those other opportunities so that, I can then turn those profits into precious metals, into gold, and, store them long term. And I like being outside the system. There's no third party, counterpart. I like the idea of owning, pieces of good companies. So while I'm sleeping, there's truck drivers out there driving, semiconductors somewhere. There's people in the factory making semiconductors out there. It's producing a profit. these companies, with inflation, they can just raise their prices. And precious metals is just one tool in the toolbox. This video is getting longer than I expected, so I'm going to wrap it up. But Kansas Kid also had another great point, is that money's supposed to flow. It's not supposed to be stagnant. When, water becomes stagnant, it becomes like a toxic cesspool. There's a old parable, the parable of the talents, and that parable always bothered me because the guy that was called a wicked servant, all he did was, the talent that was given to him, he took it and buried it. He didn't try and steal from the master or anything. And, the master came back and was, he's like, here, I still have what you gave me. And he goes, be gone from me, you wicked servant, and he rewarded others. And what little that guy had was taken away and given to the one with more. And that parable always bothered me. But the more I learn financial literacy, how money's supposed to flow and not be stagnant, how it benefits everyone around you if it is flowing, I'm beginning to understand that parable. And, my goal is to learn how money flows and not to build a dam or bury it, Well, this is getting long. This is the Philly Stacker wishing you health, wealth, prosperity. Keep learning, keep stacking. Till the next one.